Okay, so picture this. You're in the middle of the Arizona desert, and you see a castle. It's so weird, so out of place, its story is almost too wild to be true. We're talking about Tovrea's castle today, a story filled with huge dreams, a pretty intense rivalry, and an ending, well, an ending nobody could have predicted. So, yeah, the first thing on everyone's mind is what on earth is this thing? I mean, it looks like a giant tiered wedding cake just dropped in the middle of Phoenix. It's totally bizarre, and let me tell you, the story of how it got there is just as strange as it looks. All right, so to really get this, we've got to go back to the beginning. And this isn't some fairy tale about kings and queens. Nope. Our story starts with a very ambitious Italian immigrant, a guy named Alessio Carraro, who had a huge idea. So it's 1928, and Carraro snags 277 acres, a pretty much empty desert. But he wasn't just thinking about building a hotel. No, his vision was way bigger. He wanted to build an entire destination, a super fancy residential community with this amazing resort right in the middle. The goal? To bring in the big money home buyers. And the way he went about it was, well, let's just say it was unconventional. He didn't really mess with detailed blueprints or anything like that. His first step was to literally start blowing things up, using dynamite to blast through granite hills just to create a flat spot for the foundation. Pretty wild, right? This guy's resourcefulness was seriously next level, especially when it came to the inside. He basically went treasure hunting at demolition sites all over Phoenix. He got beautiful maple floors from a house being torn down, fancy cabinets from a bank that was renovating, and get this, he even took the bank's vault and turned it into a wine cellar. I mean, how cool is that? And he didn't just stop with the building itself. Outside, he planted this incredible cactus garden with like over 300 different kinds of desert plants. So he wasn't just building a hotel, you know? He was creating this whole unique desert oasis around it. Then, for Christmas in 1930, Carraro decided to make a statement. He lit the whole place up with 1,000 colorful lights. Can you imagine? It turned into this amazing holiday spectacle, this glowing beacon in the dark desert. And yeah, people definitely started to notice. So, things are looking pretty good, right? Everything seems to be on track, but there was a huge problem, a fatal flaw in his grand plan, and it was happening literally right next door, and it was something he had absolutely no control over. Okay, so this is where it gets messy. On one side of the property line, you've got Carraro building this luxury paradise, right? A fancy hotel, beautiful gardens, a place for upscale homes. And on the other side, Edward Tovrea's industrial meatpacking plant. We're talking stockyards, animal pens, the whole deal. Yeah, not exactly the kind of neighbor you want for a luxury resort. And the whole thing boiled down to this 140-acre strip of land between them. Carraro needed it, like, desperately, to create a buffer zone. But his rival, Tovrea, swooped in and bought it out from under him. And then, to really twist the knife, he immediately filled it with sheep and goat pens right up against Carraro's property. That was it. Game over. Carraro knew his dream was toast. I mean, who's going to pay top dollar for a house with that view? So, just like that, the dream dies. A defeated Carraro puts his half-finished castle on the market. But this is where the story gets really, really weird. I mean, think about it. Who in their right mind would buy a failed hotel project right next to a stinky meatpacking plant? Well, in 1931, he finds a buyer. The thing is, the deal was done through an agent, so Carraro had no clue who was actually buying it. The secret buyer? Della Tovrea, the wife of the guy who sabotaged his entire dream. Unbelievable, right? The failed hotel just became the private residence of his arch rival. But, you know, this wasn't exactly a happily ever after situation. The story of the castle as a private home is actually pretty tragic. Just a year after they moved in, Edward Tovrea died. Della ended up living there for decades, but her time in the castle, well, it also ended in tragedy. So Della Tovrea lived in that castle for almost 40 years. But then, in 1969, something awful happened. She was the victim of a really violent home invasion. And while she actually survived the attack, she ended up passing away from pneumonia not long after. And that really was the end of an era for the castle as a family home. Okay, so let's recap. We've got a failed hotel, a bitter rivalry, family tragedy. So how in the world does this place go from that to being a beloved public landmark that an entire city cherishes? Well, after sitting there for decades, the city of Phoenix finally stepped in. In 1993, the city bought the whole property. They saw how special it was historically and architecturally. So they started this huge restoration project, not just on the building, but on those amazing cactus gardens that Alessio Carraro had planted all those years ago. And that's really the big takeaway here, the ultimate irony of the whole story. What started as one man's spectacular failed dream got turned into something completely different, totally by accident. Through this crazy chain of events, Carraro's failed hotel became something he never, ever could have planned, a cherished, lasting landmark for everyone to enjoy. And it really makes you think, how many other stories like this are out there? What other forgotten dreams or accidental legacies are just hiding in plain sight in our own backyards?